Hey guys, it's Sunday reading day, and I'll be reading from the book 25 Ghost Stories, written by various authors. I'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust, turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. And the technical issues continue. Sorry I'm late. Had some technical issues with the backdrop and the camera and all that stuff. It's just going to be one of those days. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. I'm not wearing green. He's wearing green. So, I do have green on my phone. I don't know. There's no one here to pinch me anyway. I don't even know who started that pinch for luck thing. Anyway, my name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you have a paranormal issue, we can get to you. It may take us a couple days because California is a very big state. A lot of people, when they think of California, they think of us like Hawaii with beaches and bikini-clad people and people swimming and stuff. And we are surfers, the whole thing. Except that there's a lot more to California. There's a lot of inland areas. There's farmland. There's high desert, low desert, lots of mountains, beautiful mountains. Part of the Sierra Nevada mountains are here and Sierra. It might take us a couple days to get to you. And in the case it does take a couple days to get to you, we do have psychics on staff who can call you and talk to you about what may or may not be going on with your particular situation. Let me lower this mic a little bit. Because, there we go. Guys, get to see my lovely face. I get to see your lovely faces. Anyway, welcome to the show. This is Sunday Reading Day, and this is the day we read from a ghost theme book. Now, some of these stories may be real, nonfiction, right? Nonfictions. And some may be fictional. The book we're reading currently is called 25 Ghost Stories. And some of these stories, I'm not sure. Some sound like they might be real. Some sound like they might be rather fictional, made-up stories. But either way, there's some really good stuff in here to listen to and read. And that's what I mean by listen to. I mean, just like the thing says, grab your popcorn and snacks, jump on your couch, put the fire on if you're back east where it's cool. It's too warm in California. Light your fire, have some hot cocoa, coffee, or whatever it is you do. Or maybe you're having dinner. You're here in California, and you're here in California, Nevada, and maybe even in the mid-states where it's not that late. And you're having dinner. Just sit down, turn the sound on. You don't even have to look at me, and just enjoy it. Just enjoy hearing the read. Quick announcement is that I did start up another coffee with the Ghosthunter. I'm thinking I might do those on the weekends. We're going to do it one more during the week at 9 a.m. But I'm thinking about doing those on the weekends in that, because our good friend Mary Muter does a thing on Sundays where she'll go in and do one at 9 o'clock, Eastern, 9 a.m. Eastern, or 10 a.m. Eastern. Anyway, and then she'll do one in the evening. And I'm thinking maybe we should do that. That way it'll give people time in the mornings to have coffee with me and chit-chat, and then we could do an evening one that's fairly early for everybody on the East Coast, and we could chit-chat. So I'm seriously considering that after this next round. But if you want information on that, that's going to be on, I think, Thursday the 28th at 9 a.m. Pacific. And check out the California Haunts Meetup. There is a link in down at the bottom of the description of this show. Okay. Also, you see that ticker at the bottom. We are getting back out and getting ghost hunting. I took a sabbatical, a lot of death around me, and so I took a ghost hunting sabbatical. We are getting out there. We've got 4 cases lined up. The thing is, I've started to go through equipment, and I've got to replace some stuff. So I'm looking for some donations if you guys can do it. It's not required, but I'm looking for donations to help get that equipment. I'm figuring around $100 is what I need to upgrade it and have it repaired. I have a friend that does electronic work, so he's able to repair stuff for me. But of course, he has to have a little bit of compensation, right? So if you can help me out with that, that would be wonderful. I would really appreciate it because we are going to get out and start helping families. And as we're doing that, we're going to take you guys along with us. So, I mean, that's all part of the fun of ghost hunting. And then we're going to teach you stuff. We're going to teach you what an ITC water technique is and things like that. So, hopefully you can help us out a little bit with that. I'd really appreciate it. Again, if you can't see the ticker running along the bottom, or you can't see the full description of the show, depending on where you're watching from or listening from, as far as the meetup goes with the Ghost Hunter, feel free to go to the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team meetup page and look under events and just Google or just roll it down and you'll see it there. Okay, well, this book that we're reading is a very interesting book in that, like I said, it's written by various authors. Some of these authors are not named in here, but it is written by various authors, but there are some different stories, and like I said, some may be true, some may not be true. But it's a really good book. It's really well put together. We read things from the Gutenberg project, and these are old books back from the 1800s all the way into 1946 that are out of copyright, and people have taken the time to translate them onto ebooks and create ebooks out of them. And this is what we're reading from, and it's nice because there's no royalties or copyrights or anything like that with it. So, yeah. All right. Anyway, that being said, I keep saying that. Let's get into this, and I'm going to read for about an hour, and then you guys can go your merry way. But again, I apologize for being behind schedule today because, man, talk about technical. In fact, I was panicky because I didn't think, when the camera wasn't working. The camera that's on board this laptop is horrible. The one that HP has that's on this laptop, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. Which is why I need my 4K camera that I normally use. So I'm glad I was able to get that up. Okay, so let's get on with this, and let me power my tablet up, and away we'll go. And read some ghost stories. And I hope you guys are having a great St. Patrick's Day. Corned beef and cabbage, right? Big chunks of bread. There's even Irish bread. I ran across that at the store today. But I don't have time to make that stuff, so it's just going to be normal food for me tonight. But it's St. Pat's Day. Now Easter, that's another ballgame. Figure out what to make for Easter, and that's coming up too. So Grogu back here is going to be switching to some bunny ears here, and you'll see that. I had to switch back to my old chair too. The replacement chair I had. Remember, we always talk about me leaning back all the time and using WD-40, and someday I'm going to lean back and just keep going. Well, with that one, no WD-40 needed, and I started to lean back, and I just kept going. And almost went through the backdrop, so that one has to go. And plus, if you notice the last shows I did with that, I wasn't even close enough to the screen. Right away, it puts me like back here. So, yeah, that had to go. I'd rather have a squeaky until I can afford to get myself one of those really cool gamer ones, So I could be living in utter comfort. Okay, we shall continue with our book. We are at like page 70 of 190, so I know we've got at least a couple days more to go with this. We're 36% through the book. And it moved. That's not good. Give me a second, because it seemed to have shifted pages on me. What the heck? I think this is where we're at. This is where we left off last night, was from the tomb, or the last time. So let me get up here, figure out where we're at, okay? I'm trying to figure out where we're at, because this is not where I left off. Okay, we did the Phantom Hag, I know that. I think we're from the tomb. Let me double check. Yeah. Alright, so we're in from the tomb is where we left off, and let me double check my notes, because I think I took notes on it. So bear with me real quick so I can figure this out, because for some reason it did a skip thing on me, and let me see where we're at. More technical. Looks like Murphy's Law is kicking in today. Anything to make me crazy, right? Oh, and by the way, next week we're booked every day. We've got some great guests coming up. Hopefully nobody has issues and has to cancel because we got some really, really good guests coming up. Let me see. Sometimes I'll take a picture of the page that I'm on so I can double check it all. Sometimes, not all the time. Doesn't mean nothing, right? And the way things have been going today, that's not it. That's not it. Okay. That was February 25th. Okay. All right, I think we're in from the tomb is where we left off. Well, maybe this is it right here. Yeah. See, there's my picture. All right. Okay. So here we go. Again, I'm going to read for about an hour, and I hope you enjoy it. And these books are pretty good. Okay. I love doing it on an ebook because I can see you guys in the chat room. And that's right, I almost forgot. If you're watching from Facebook, and a lot of you are, and you like what you see in here today, outside of me drinking water, feel free to hit that like button. Feel free to hit that like button. Chat in the chat room amongst yourselves, because what that does is that puts us up higher in the FYP on Facebook, which puts us out to more people. You can see how the day's going. Same thing with YouTube. Oh yeah, and follow on Facebook. Sorry about that. Same thing with YouTube. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, as we're always looking to add to our subscribers. And hit that like button if you like what you hear and see today. And, of course, chat in the chat room. Because, again, that puts us higher in what they call the FYP system, which puts us out to more people. It distributes us out farther. I really appreciate it. Same thing with Twitch. All the other social media pages work like that. Okay? All right. I'll shut up now and read. All right, let me enlarge this. And that's what I was saying is I enjoy reading it on screen, but I also enjoy it in an ebook because... And it jumped again on me. Hang on. Oh, here we go. Because I can enlarge it as large as I need to read it with my old with my old blind eyes. All right, here we go. And again, I have people that listen to me and they're doing their housework, so they put me in their pocket. I'm good. I like to travel. It's all good. Okay, so here we go. This is From the Tomb, translated from the French of... This ought to be fun. Translated from the French of Day-25 by E.C. Wagner. Maupassant. Maupassant. All right, here we go. The guests file slowly into the hotel's great dining hall. Make sure you guys can hear me okay. Into the hotel's great. I don't want to be too high. Into the hotel's great dining hall and took their places. The waiters began to serve them leisurely to give the tardy ones time to arrive and to save themselves the bother of bringing back the courses. If you could tell me if the audio sounds okay, that would be great. If somebody can do that for me, I appreciate it. To give the tardy ones time to arrive and to save themselves the bother of bringing back the courses. And the old bathers, the yearly habitués, with whom the season was far advanced, kept a close watch on the door each time it opened, hoping for the coming of new faces. New faces. The single distraction of all pleasure resorts. We go to dinner chiefly to canvass the daily arrivals, to wonder who they are, what they do, and what they think. A restless desire seems to have taken possession of us. A longing for pleasant adventures, for friendly acquaintances, perhaps, for possible lovers. In this elbow-to-elbow life of our unknown neighbors this elbow-to-elbow life, our unknown neighbors become of paramount importance. Curiosity is piqued, simply on the alert, and the social instinct doubly active. We have hatreds for a week, friendships for a month, and view all men with the special eyes of wandering plays intimacy. Sometimes, during an hour's chat after dinner, under the trees of the park where ripples a healing spring, we discover men of superior intellect and surprising merit, and a month later who have fully forgotten these new friends, so charming at first sight. There, too, more especially than elsewhere, serious and lasting ties are formed. We see each other every day. We learn to know each other very soon, and in the affection that springs up so rapidly between us, there is mingled much of the sweet abandon of old and tried intimates. And later on, how tender are the memories cherished of the first hours of this friendship, of the first communion in which the soul came to light, of the first glances that questioned and responded to the secret thoughts and interrogatories of the lips have not dared yet utter of the first cordial confidence and delicious sensation of opening his one heart to someone who has seemed to lay bare to you his own. The very dullness of the hours, as it were the monotony of days all alike, but renders more complete the rapid budding and blooming of friendship's flower. That evening, then, as on every evening, we awaited the appearance of unfamiliar faces. There came only two, but very peculiar ones, those of a man and a woman, father and daughter. They seemed to have stepped from the pages of some weird legend, and yet there was an attraction about them, albeit an unpleasant one, that made me set them down at once as the victims of some fatality. The father was tall, spare, a little bent, with hair blanched white, too white for his still young countenance, and in his manner and about his person the sedate austerity of carriage that bespeaks the Puritan. The daughter was possibly some 24 or 25 years of age. She was very slight, emaciated, her exceedingly pale countenance being a languid, spiritless expression. One of those people with whom we sometimes encounter, apparently too weak for the cares and tasks of life, too feeble to move or to do the things that we must do every day. Nevertheless, the girl was pretty, with the ethereal beauty of an apparition. It was she, undoubtedly, who came for the benefit of the waters. They chanced to be placed at table immediately opposite me, and I was not long in noticing that the father, too, had a strange affection, something wrong about the nerves, it seemed. Whenever he was going to reach for anything, his hand, with a jerky twitch, described a sort of fluttering zigzag, before he was able to grasp what he was after. Soon, the motion disturbing us so much, I kept my head turned in order not to see it, but not before I had observed that the young girl kept her glove on her left hand while she ate. Dinner ended. I went out as usual for a turn in the grounds belonging to the establishment, a sort of park, I might say, stretching clear to the little station of Auvergne, Chateau Guyon, nestling in a gorge at the foot of the high mountain, from which flowed the sparkling, bubbling springs, hot from the furnace of an ancient volcano. Beyond us there, the domes, small extinct craters, of which Chateau Guyon is the starting point, raised their serrated heads above the long chain, while beyond the domes came two distinct regions, one of them needle-like peaks, the other of bold, precipitous mountains. It was very warm that evening, and I contented myself with pacing to and fro under the rustling trees, gazing at the mountains and listening to the strains of the band, pouring from the casino, situated on a knoll that overlooked the grounds. Presently, I perceived the father and daughter coming toward me with slow steps. I bowed to them in that pleasant continental fashion with which one always salutes his hotel companions. The gentleman halted at once. "Pardon me, sir," said he, "but may I ask you if you can direct us to a short walk, easy and pretty, if possible?" "Certainly," I answered, and offered to lead them myself to the valley through which the river flows, a deep, narrow cleft between two great declivities, rocky and wooded. They accepted, and as we walked, we naturally discussed the virtue of the mineral waters. They had, as I had surmised, come there on his daughter's account. "She had a strange malady," said he, "the seat of which her physicians cannot determine. She suffers from the most inexplicable nervous symptoms. Sometimes they declare her ill of heart disease, sometimes of liver complaint, again of a spinal trouble. At present, they attribute it to stomach, that great motor and regulator of the body. This protean disease of 1,000 forms, 1,000 modes of attack. It is why we're here. I myself think it's her nerves. In any case, it's sad." This reminded me of his own jerking hand. "It may be hereditary," said I. "Your own nerves are a little disturbed, are they not?" "Mine?" he answered tranquilly. "Not at all. I have always possessed the calmest nerves." Then suddenly, as if bethinking himself, "For this," touching his hand, "is not nerves, but the result of a shock, a terrible shock, that I suffered once. Fancy it, sir, this child of mine has been buried alive." I could find nothing to say. I was dumb with surprise. Yes, he continued, barely alive, but hear the story. It's not long. For some times past, Juliet had seemed affected with a disordered action of the heart. We were finally certain that the trouble was organic, and feared the worst. One day it came. She was brought in lifeless, dead. She had fallen dead while walking in the garden. Physicians came in haste, but nothing could be done. She was gone. For 2 days and nights I watched beside her myself, and with my own hands placed her in her coffin, which I followed to the cemetery and saw placed in the family vault. This was in the country, in the province of Lorraine. It had been my wish, too, that she should be buried with her jewels, bracelets, necklace, and rings, all presents that I had given her, and in her first ball dress. You can imagine, sir, the state of my heart in returning home. She was all that I had left. My wife had been dead for many years. I returned, in truth, half mad, shut myself alone in my room, and fell into my chair dazed, unable to move, merely a miserable breathing wreck. Soon my old valet, Prosper, who had helped me place Julia in her coffin and lay her away for her last sleep, came in noiselessly to see if he could not induce me to eat. I shook my head, answering nothing. He persisted. Monsieur is wrong. This will make him ill. Will Monsieur allow me? Then put him to bed. No, no, I answered. Let me alone. He yielded and withdrew. How many hours passed I do not know. What a night! It was very cold. My fire of logs had long since burned out in the great fireplace, and the wind, a wintry blast, charged with an icy frost, howled and screamed about the house and strained at my windows with a curiously sinister sound. Long hours, I say, rolled by. I sat where I had fallen, prostrated, overwhelmed, my eyes wide open, but my body strengthless, dead, my soul drowned in despair. Suddenly, the great bell gave a loud peal. I gave such a leap that my chair cracked under me. The slow, solemn sound rang through the empty house. I looked at the clock. It was 2 a.m. Who could be coming at such an hour? Twice again the bell pulled sharply. The servants would never answer because perhaps never hear it. I took up a candle and made my way to the door. I was about to demand, "Who's there?" But, ashamed of the weakness, nerved myself and drew back the bolts. My heart throbbed, my pulse beat. I threw back the panel brusquely, and there in the darkness saw a shape like a phantom, dressed in white. I recoiled, speechless, with anguish, stammering, Who are you?" A voice answered, "It is I, father." It was my child, Juliet. Truly, I thought myself mad. I shuddered, shrinking backward before the spectre as it advanced, gesticulating with my hand to ward off the apparition. It is that gesture which has never left me. Again the phantom spoke. "Father, father, see, I'm not dead. Someone came to rob me of my jewels. They cut off my finger. The flowing blood revived me. And I saw then that she was covered with blood. I fell to my knees, panting and sobbing, laughing, all in one. As soon as I regained my senses, but still so bewildered, I scarcely comprehended the happiness that had come over me. I took her in my arms, carried her to her room, and rang frantically for Prosper to rekindle the fire, bring a warm drink for her, and go for the doctor. He came running, entered, gazed a moment at my daughter in the chair, gave a gasp of fright and horror, and fell back dead. It was he who had opened the vault, who had wounded and robbed my child, and then abandoned her, but he could not efface all trace of his deed, and he had not even taken the trouble to return the coffin to its niche, sure, besides, of not being suspected by me, who trusted him so fully. We are a truly unfortunate people, monsieur." He was silent. Meanwhile, the night had come on, enveloping in the gloom the still and solitary figure, the solitary little valley. A sort of mysterious dread seemed to fall upon me in presence of these strange beings, this corpse come to life, and this father with his painful gestures. "Let us return," said I. "The night has grown chill." And still in silence, we retraced our steps back to the hotel, and I shortly afterward returned to the city. I lost all further knowledge of the two peculiar visitors to my favorite summer resort. Okay. Next story is Sandy's Ghost. And there's no author on this one. So let me grab a little thing of water. It's warm. It's warm in the house. It was 75 today, so it's getting there. Okay. Again, this is Sandy's Ghost. No author. Accommodations for the night, stranger. Wow. Yes. I reckon we can fix a place for you. Have a chair and set you down. Thank you. Don't you find this rather a lonely place? No neighbors, no nothing that I can see? How came you to settle here, so far removed from other habitations? Well, perhaps it's best not to ask too many questions at once. Beg your pardon? No offense was intended, I assure you. Simply out of curiosity. Don't say another word, stranger, but come in and we'll have a snack for supper. Polly, bring on the victuals. Yes, just in time. Polly at once obeyed. She was a typical Western girl, tall, lithe, graceful, and limpid-eyed. She was clear-skinned and high-spirited, too, and in this case ignorant through no fault of her own. John Barr's eyes scanned her intently, and a flush came to her cheeks. For the first time in her life, she was unpleasantly conscious of her bare feet. It may have been this that made her stumble and spill some of the contents of an earthen bowl over a guest's knee as she placed it on the table. Her eyes flashed, and a tear of anger twinkled on the lashes. She stopped, half meaning to apologize, but an oath from her father caused her to set the bowl down heavily and to hurry from the cabin. A moment later, Barr saw a flare of pink calico from behind a pile of rocks. Old Kit Robinson saw it too. Don't wonder at your saying 'tain't right. She's a smart girl, and a good looker too. I should have been sent away from here to school to be educated. But she won't leave her no count, Dad. I ought to be shot for cussing her, but I ain't what I used to be. Sitting here and keeping guard makes me nervous. Remember, these were written in the 1800s. Okay, guys? Bear that in mind. Barr's eyes asked a question. His lips refused to speak. Supper eaten, the men went outside and sat with their chairs tilted back against the cabin. Something in the younger man's face had softened old Kit into a reminiscent mood and made him strangely inclined to gratify an idle curiosity. The soft evening wind sighed through the branches of the tall spruce pines, and the declining rays of the setting sun caused the shadow of the rude home to stretch out longer across the greensward. From his shelter, where he sat, John Barr looked out on the grand ranges of the Rockies and wondered where their vastness were to be to find the man he sought, the finding of whom had brought him out into this wild and almost forsaken mining camp. Stranger, I took a liking to you. You've a something about you that reminds me of someone I know, and you look like an honest chap. Say, do you believe in ghosts? He put the question very suddenly, and a look of disappointment crossed his face when Barr told him he didn't believe. Wow, I've seen him. A thought connecting the pink calico with something in the past came to Barr's mind. Can you tell me about it, he asked. I'd liked her if y'all swore on your derringer never to blab. Will you swear? The solitary guest started to smile, but the smile faded at the thought of hushed tears in Polly's eyes. It might make it easier for her if he humored the old man. I'll swear, he said, and he did. Do you see that old spruce at the turn of the trail and the cliffs just above? Wow. That's the spot I'm watching and guarding till the owner comes to claim it. I'm quick to burn powder and a pretty sure shot. I know a man when I sees him, and I ain't easy fooled. Wow. To begin with, I had a partner once, and he was a man sure enough. He was from the state of New York. I never asked him as to how so fine a gent come to be digging and shoveling in the Rockies. Though to myself, I said there was some good reason. He had light hair, and we called him Sandy, for short. And he was just or about as gritty as sand. He was as unlike as any of the two fellers you ever saw. He was quiet-like and steady, and I was sort of wild and reckless, and like mounting dew most too well. Well, when we had a little dust scrape together, we would divvy, and I took my share way down to the station on the other side of the cliffs, and sent it off to the bank at Helena. But I always left some hid where the gal would find it. Old Sandy had a bank of his own that no one knew about, excepting himself, and every time we divided, he'd carry part of it to his hiding place, and then give the rest to me to send to his boy. That, he said, was being educated in some college way up in Boston. He seemed to think a heap of that boy. After a while, my old woman gave up, and soon we laid her away on the hillside. It was hard, stranger. Old Kit's voice failed him for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure and continued. But when old Sandy, my good old pard, gave up, I didn't care for nothing. We buried him in style. All the boys from round the diggings was there, and many an eye was wet. We didn't have ne'er a preacher, but the gal, she prayed at the grave. For the life of me, I don't know where she learnt it. Reckon the old woman must have told her. Next morning, the gal showed me a letter that Sandy gave her just before he died. It was to his boy, and she was to give it to him if he ever come out of his way, and she's got it yet. That same evening after supper, feeling kinder glummish, and there was something in my throat I couldn't swallow, I took a stroll up the gulch. I went on out to the top of the edge of the big rock and got her studying, where I find another pard like Sandy. All at once, I felt a hand touch my shoulder, kind of light once or twice. I jumped up, half expecting it was Sandy. But it was only the gal. Well, I was old Tuckback at first, and then I got mad. "What are you doing up here?" I asked, kind of rough. She had tears in her eyes, and she looked at me and said, "Pap, don't get mad. I was lonesome. I seed you coming up this way, and I followed you, 'cause I wanted to tell you that Sandy said to give his boy his pile when he comes." "Wow," says I. "You might have waited till I come back to the house." And then I sent her back. After she was gone, I sought her studying. Whatever Sandy's pile was. I tried to think what he had, but it weren't used. All at once I noticed it was plumb dark, and as these mountains ain't a healthy place for a man to roam in the order after nightfall, especially if he ain't got his shooting irons on, I cut a pretty swift gait for the shack. Just as I come round the bend, thought at the pine, I happened to look up toward the cliff, and that saw Sandy. Yes, sir, it was him, sure as you're born. My feet felt heavy as lead, and I couldn't move from the spot. I tried to holler, but it weren't no go. Finally, I gave a sudden jerk and made a step toward him, and as I did so, he disappeared. Then I made tracks for home, but I kept mum, 'cause I knowed the boys would say that Mountain Dew was licking up my brains, and I would be seeing snakes and such things afore long. The next night, somehow or another, I thought to go and see if he was there again, and sure enough, there he saw it, looking kind of sad and making marks on the rocks with his fingers. I had my hand on my gun this time, so I got a little closer than before. But, by hookery, he got away from me again, nor did he come back. I could hardly wait for the next night to come round. At the same time I was on hand, good and early, just as it began to get dark, and the trees looked like long spooks a-stretching out their arms. I looked toward the cliff, and there he saw him marking and a-scratching on the rock with his fingers, and still looking sad. Now, this being the third time, I kinder got bold, and I went a little closer, and says, "Sandy, well, what's the What matter with you? Didn't the boys do the planting right for you? Then as luck would have it, I thought of something else right quick, and I said, or is it the dust you have hid where you're sitting? Well, he looked up then, and the happiest smile come to his face. And all at once he disappeared again. And since then I have sought it here and guarded the place till the right one comes along to claim it. Let's see. What did you say your name was? Pardon me. I thought I told you. My name is John Willett Barr. Polly, oh Polly, come here, gal. What was Sandy's full name? I plumb forgot. What'd you want to know that for? She asked. I ain't going to tell you now. That's my secret. Come, gal, tell me to once, or it won't be healthy for you. Well, then, she answered stubbornly, it's John Willett Barr. At her reply, the younger man's face grew deathly pale, and he started up from his chair. But Kit thrust him back into a seat, saying, Bring me the letter, Polly. What are you going to do with it, Pa? She inquired cautiously. I promised old Sandy on my oath to keep it till the right one comes along to claim it. And I mean to keep my word. The right one is here, gal. There he sits. So trot that letter out, and don't parley long with me if you knows when you're well off. Polly stared at the younger man in utter bewilderment for a moment. Then, turning slowly, she stepped quietly into the cabin after the precious document. An unusual gleam of joy lighted up her face, and suppressed excitement showed in her eyes. Under her breath she said, Somehow, your brother, I felt he was the right one. Too truly, John Barr realizes, in that painful moment, that he whom he sought was now dead to him, that the father from whom he had been parted so many years was sleeping that long dreamless sleep in the clay mound on the hillside, which marked his last resting place. As he turned to look at the face of old honest Kit, who had been his father's friend during those long years of forced exile, a happy smile lit up the old miner's rugged features as he pointed with his finger to the rock cliff near the old spruce vine and said in an exultant, trembling voice, Thar he be, stranger, just as I have seen him many a night, your dad, my pard, poor old Sandy. With an eager voice, John Barr sprang forward, and the mountains echoed and re-echoed the plaintive cry of Father, Father. But his outstretched arms clasped only emptiness and the darkening shadows of the rapidly approaching night. So that was it. Okay. The next one is The Ghost of Red Creek by S.T. This thing I just read, which I think is hilarious. When I was growing up, I used to love to read during the summers, and so I would pick a book, and every year I picked the same book, and it was The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. That's how it was written. The first time I read through Huckleberry Finn, I was utterly bewildered trying to read it, especially aloud, right? This is what this just reminded me of. I was reading Huckleberry Finn. All right, next, The Ghost of Red Creek by S.T. To the northward of Mississippi City and its neighbor, Hansborough, there extends a tract of pine forest for miles, with but few habitations scattered through it. Black and red creeks, with their numerous branches, drain this region into the Pascagoula River to the eastward, with the swamps of Pascagoula as a refuge, and the luxuriant and unfrequented bottoms of red and black creeks to browse upon. There are few choicier spots for deer. Knowing this fact, a small party of gentlemen on the day before a crisp, cold Christmas started from Hansborough in a large four-wheeled wagon for a 30-mile drive into this wilderness of pine and a week's sport after deer. The guide was Jim Carruthers, a true woodsman, and the driver and general factotum, a jolly African-American named Jack Lyons, than whom no one could make a better... Okay, again, 1800s, okay? So, I'm going to try and clean this up a little bit, all right? So we're going to say cake and cook a venison steak. His laugh could be heard a quarter of a mile, and his good nature was as expansive as the range of laughter. Okay? The usual experiences of a hunting camp were heartily enjoyed during the first days of his life out of doors. But his cream did not rise until about the fifth night, when, from familiar intercourse, Jack Lyons became loquacious, and after the day's 20 or 25-mile walk, would spend yards in front of the campfire, which brought forgetfulness and fatigue. The night before New Year's was intensely cold. The cold north wind of the afternoon had subsided to sunset, and only a gust of wind now and again touched the musical leaves of the pines, making them vibrant with the mournful score of nature's operas which even maestros have failed to catch. In front of two new and white tents, two sportsmen reclined at length, within reach of the warmth of the fire, while opposite them rested at ease the guide and the worthy Jack Lyons. Wearied with the day's chase, four staunch hounds, Ringwood, Rose, Jen, and Boxer, were dreaming of future quarry. The firelight brought out in bright relief the trunks of the tall pines like cathedral columns, and sparkling through the leafy dome overhead, the scintillating stars glistened with a diamond brightness. A silence which added its influence to the scene rested about the borders of the creek below, and gave more effect to the story of the veteran teamster than perhaps it otherwise would have had. "If the deer run down the creek," said old Jack, smacking his lips over a carefully prepared brewing of the real camp-belted punch, "we's bound to see fun tomorrow, for they'll take us down thar by the old Gibbet's place. In daylight, there's no place like it, but after nightfall, you bet you wouldn't catch this man out." Okay? Again, 1800s. Don't hold me again. Don't get me banned over this. Old Jack was naturally asked why he didn't care about visiting the Gibbet's place at night, asking to be excused until he filled his pipe. The silence was unbroken until his return. He piled on more pine knots and commenced. "You know, gemmen, that when the gunboats was into sound, we folks had to travel way up back hard on dense roads to outrun the range of the range of their big guns. I was gagged by Mr. Harrison in hauling salt. I was engaged by Mr. Harrison in hauling salt from the factory at Mississippi City on the beach over to Mobile, and I had been making the trip every. I'm just saying, don't get mad at me. Every week or so. This backcountry road was never thought of by the Federals. Was never thought of by the Federals, and we had good times along the way. No shells, no shooting. The night given I've spoken of was a Friday. That usual knows is unlucky. Well, you see, I hitched up Betsy and Rose in the lead, and old Fox and Blossom at the pole, and takes in the biggest load of salt that team ever carried. I starts out and crosses the Biloxi River and Hansboro just as the moon was going down. Yes, boss, these roads weren't no better than now, and the rain had made them mightily rough when you come to the holes. I sat in the seat whistling to cows in the pea patch and thinking of Sarah Jameson, who was afterwards my wife, when I felt off the four-wheel go crush in a hole up to the hub. I'd made 17 miles out of Hansboro. I did some cussing and then went to the fence about 20 yards off and took out a rail to prise up the wheel. Then I saw I was at Mr. Gibbett's place. I says to myself, I'll go up to the house and get old Mr. Gibbett to give me a turn. I had done gone by there 2 weeks afore and seen the old man. Okay, it's been 2 weeks since he's seen him. Now, gentlemen, you listen to me. For what I was telling you is as sure as Jenny will blow the horn on the last day. I walked up to the house, and the door, I saw a bright light inside. It shone out from the windows, and I saw shadows of Miss Gibbet and Mrs. Gibbet on the window curtain. Sure, honey, sure. The front door was set, and I steps up onto the gallery and knocks with the end of my whip. I didn't knock loud. Okay? God bless us all, gentlemen. The lights went out just like that, and I hear set up a laugh. Ha ha ha. How that set my knees a shaking. I opened the door and there was no sign of anybody. I struck a match, and all the furniture was moved out, and the old red curtain that I thought I see was in rags. The whole family was gone for sure. I didn't know exactly what to think, but then strange voices. But I started back to the wagon, where it lightened. And bless God, there in the front yard were 6 graves just made. Something wrong here, said I. And I built a fire by the wagon and dug the wheel out. Just then, an old square pasture come along the road from Mobile, and he tells me the news. Old man Gibbet, old man Gibbet unalived his wife and 4 children, and then unalived himself. They were all buried in the front yard, and the house was deserted 10 days before. Gemmin, when I hear that, the mules made the quickest time to Mobile ever seen. And you can tell me there's no ghosts, but you don't catch me round that house, that log house of Gibbets, except when the sun's high. Jack looked suspiciously over his shoulder into the darkness and crawled into his blanket, muttering, It scares this man, even now, to tell you about that night. Sleep soon fell upon the camp, but impression of old Jack's story survived the night, and the next day he still asserted its truth. Okay. I didn't want to offend anybody, so, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let me make sure I got audio here. Yeah. All right, the next one is called The Spectre Bride. There's no author. The winter nights up at Sault Ste. Marie are as white. Oh, Sault Ste. Marie are as white and luminous as the Milky Way. The silence that rests upon the solitude appears to be white also. Nature has included sound in her arrestment, save the still white frost. All things are obliterated. The stars are there, but they seem to belong to heaven and not to earth. They are at an immeasurable height, and so black is the night that the opaque ether rolls between them and the observer in great liquid billows. In such a place it is difficult to believe that the world is peopled to any great extent. One fancies that Cain has just killed Abel, and that there is need for the greatest economy in the matter of human life. The night Ralph Hagedorn started out for Echo Bay, he felt as if he were the only man in the world. So complete was the solitude through which he was passing, he was going over to attend the wedding of his best friend, and was, in fact, to act as the groomsman. Business had delayed him, and he was compelled to make his journey at night. But he hadn't gone far before he began to feel the exhilaration of the skater. His skates were keen, his legs fit for a longer journey than the one he had undertaken, and the tang of the frost was to him what a spur is to the spirited horse. He cut through the air as a sharp stone cleaves the water. He could feel the tumult of the air as he cleft it. As he went on, he began to have fancies. It seemed to him that he was enormously tall, a great Viking of the Northland, hastening over icy fjords to his love. That reminded him that he had a love, though, indeed, that thought was always present with him as a background for other thoughts. To be sure, he had not told her she was his love, because he had only seen her a few times, and the opportunity had not presented itself. She lived in Echo Bay, too, and was to be the maid of honor to his friend's bride, which was another reason why he skated on almost as swiftly as the wind, and why, now and then, he let out a short exhilaration. The one drawback in the matter was that Marie Bijou's father had money, and that Marie lived in a fine house and wore otter skin about her throat, and little satin-lined mink boots on her feet when she went sledding, and that the jacket in which she kept a bit of her dead mother's hair had a black pearl in it as big as a pea. These things made it difficult, nay, impossible, for Ralph Hagedorn to say anything more than, "I love you." But that much he meant to have the satisfaction of saying, no matter what came of it. With this determination growing upon him, he swept along the ice which gleamed under the starlight. Indeed, Venus had made a glowing path toward the west and seemed to reassure him. He was sorry he could not skim down that avenue of light from the love star, but he was forced to turn his back upon it and face toward the northeast. It came to him with a shock that he was not alone. His eyelashes were a good deal frosted, his eyeballs blurred with the cold, and at first he thought of an illusion. But he rubbed his eyes hard, and at length made sure that not very far in front of him was a long white skater in fluttering garments, who sped over the snows fast, as ever werewolf went. He called aloud, but there was no answer, and then he gave chase, setting his teeth hard and putting attention on his firm young muscles. But however fast he might go to the white skater went faster. After a time, he became convinced, as he chanced to glance for a second at the North Star, that the white skater was leading him out of his direct path. For a moment he hesitated, wondering if he should not keep to his road. But the strange companion seemed to draw him on irresistibly, and so he followed. Of course it came to him more than once that this might be no earthly guide. Up in those latitudes, men see strange things when the hoarfrost is on the earth. Hagedorn's father, who lived up there with the Lake Superior Indians and worked in the copper mines, had once welcomed a woman at his hut on a bitter night who was gone by morning, and who left wolf tracks in the snow. Yes, it was so. And Jean Fontenelle, the half-breed, could tell you about it any day, if he were alive. Alack, the snow where the wolf's tracks were is melted now. Well, Hagedorn followed the white skater all night, and when the ice flushed red at dawn, and arrows of lovely white shot up into the cold heavens, she was gone, and Hagedorn was at his destination. Then, as he took off his skates, while the sun climbed arrogantly up to his place above all other things, Hagedorn chanced to glance lakeward, and he saw there was a great wind rift in the ice, and that the waves showed blue as sapphires beside the gleaming ice. He had swept along his intended path, watching the stars to guide him, his glance turned upward, all his body at magnificent momentum. He must have certainly have gone into that cold grave. The white skater had been his guardian angel. Much impressed, he went up to his friend's house, expecting to find there the pleasant wedding furor. But someone met him quietly at the door, and his friend came downstairs to greet him with a solemn demeanor. "Is this your wedding face?" cried Hagedorn. "Why, really, if this is the way you are affected, the sooner I take warning, the better." "There is no wedding today," said his friend. "No wedding? Why, you are not." "Marie Bijou died last night." "Marie died last night." She had been skating in the afternoon, and she came home chilled and wandering in her mind, as if the frost had got in it somehow. She got worse and worse and talked all the time of you. Of me? We wondered what it all meant. We didn't know you were lovers. I didn't know it myself. More's the pity. She said you were on the ice. She said you didn't know about the big breaking up. And she cried to us that the wind was offshore. Then she cried that you could come in by the old French creek if you only knew. I came in that way, interrupted Hagedorn. How did you come to do that? It's out of your way. So Hagedorn told him how it came to pass. And that day they watched beside the maiden, who had tapers at her head and feet. And over in the little church, the bride, who might have been at her wedding, said prayers for her friend. Then they buried her in her bridesmaid's white, and Hagedorn was there before the altar with her, as he intended for the first. At midnight, the day of the burial, her friends were married in the gloom of the cold church, and they walked together through the snow to lay their bridal wreaths on her grave. 3 nights later, Hagedorn started back again to his home. They wanted him to go by sunlight, but he had his way and went when Venus made her bright path on the ice. He hoped for the companionship of the white skater, but he did not have it. His only companion was the wind. The only voice he heard was the baying of a wolf on the north shore. The world was as white as if it had just been created, and the sun had not yet colored, nor man defiled it. Okay. Next one is How He Caught the Ghost. No author. Yes, the house is a good one, said the agent. It's in a good neighborhood, and you're getting it at almost nothing. But I think it right to tell you all about it. You are orphans, you say, and with a mother dependent on you? That makes it all the more necessary that you should know. The fact is, the house is said to be haunted. The agent could not help smiling as he said it, and he was relieved to see an answering smile on the two faces before him. Ah, you don't believe in ghosts, he went on. Nor do I, for that matter. But somehow, the reputation of the house keeps me from having long at a time. The place ought to rent for twice as much as it does. If we succeed in driving out the ghost, you will not raise the rent? Asked the boy, with a merry twinkle in his eyes. Well, no, not this year at any rate, laughed the agent. And so the house was rented, and the slip of a girl and a tall lad, her brother, went their way. Excuse me. Within a week, the family had moved into the house and were delighted with it. It was large and cool, with wide halls and fine stairways, and with more room than they needed. But that did not matter in the least, for they had always been cramped in small houses, suffering many discomforts. And they never could have afforded such a place as this if it had not been haunted. Blessings on the ghost, cried Margaret gaily as she ran about as merry as a child. Who would be without a ghost in the house when it brings one like this? And it is so near your school, said the mother. And I used to worry so over the long walk. And David can come home to lunch now, and you don't know what a pleasure that's going to be. It seems to me, David gravely explained, that if I should meet the ghost, I would treat him with the greatest politeness and encourage him to stay. We shall not miss the room he takes, shall we? I think it would be well to set aside that room over yours, Maggie, for his ghost ships own. For we shall not need that, you know. Besides, the door doesn't shut, and he can go in and out without breaking the lock. And then they all laughed and had a great deal of fun over the ghost, which was a great joke to them. They were very tired that night and slept soundly all night long. When they met the next morning, there was more laughter about the ghost, which was shy about meeting strangers, probably, and had made no effort to introduce himself. For the next 3 days, they were all hard at work, trying to bring chaos into something like order. And then it was time for the school to open, and Margaret was to begin teaching, and David inserted an advertisement in the city papers for a maid of all work, who might help their mother in their absence. For one whole day, perspective. All right, I get 1800, you guys, so bear with me. For one whole day, prospective colored servants presented themselves and announced, "Is this the house that wants a work lady? No, ma'am, I'm not going to work in this house. Catch me working in no haunted house." After which they each and all departed, and others came in their stead. One was secured after a while, but no sooner had she talked across the fence with a neighbor's servant than she too departed. "Never mind children," said Mrs. Craig wearily. "I would much rather do the work than be troubled in this way." So the maid of all work was dismissed, and the Craig family locked the doors and went to their rooms, worn out with the day's anxieties. They had been in this house 4 days, and there had been neither sight nor sound of the ghost. The very mention of it was enough to start them all to laughing, for they were thoroughly practical people, with a fondness for inquiring into anything that seemed mysterious to them, and for understanding it thoroughly before they let go. David was soon sleeping the sound sleep of a healthy boyhood, and all was silent in the house when Margaret stole swiftly into his room and laid her hand on his arm. He was not easy to waken, and several minutes had passed before he sat up in bed with an articulate murmur of surprise. "Hush," said Margaret in a whisper, with her hand on his lips. "I want you to come into my room and listen to a sound that I've been hearing for some time." "Doors creaking," suggested David as he began to dress. "Oh, nothing of the kind," she said. They walked up the stairway and along the upper hall to the door of the unused room. Something was wrong with the lock, and the door would not stay fastened, as I have said. Something that was not fear thrilled their hearts as they pushed the door further ajar and stood where they could see every foot of the vacant floor. One of their own boxes stood in the middle of the room, But aside from that, nothing was to be seen, and they looked at one another in silence. "Hold the lamp a minute, Maggie," David said, at last, and then he went all over the room and looked more particularly at its emptiness, and even felt the walls. "Secret panels, you know," he said, with a smile, but it was a very puzzled smile indeed. "I can't see what it could have been," Margaret said, as they went down the stairs. "No, I can't see either, but I'm going to see," said David. "That was a chain, and chains don't drag around by themselves, you know. A ghost could not drag a chain if he were to try." "The conventional ghost story very often drags chains," said Margaret, as she closed the door of her room. And then she lay awake all night and listened for the conventional ghost that dragged the chain, but it seemed that the weight of the chain must have wearied him, for he was not heard again. The mother had slept through it all, and next morning they gave her a vivid account of the night's adventure. "Perhaps it was someone in the house," she said, in alarm. There were no ghosts within the bounds of possibility, so far as she was concerned, but burglars were very possible indeed. Then Margaret and David both laughed more than ever. "What fun it would be," said David, "for a burglar to get into this house and try to find something worth carrying away." So they went on to the next night, all three fully determined to spend the night in listening for the ghost and running him to earth if possible. But it was Margaret that heard the ghost. After all, she had been sleeping and was suddenly startled wide awake, and there, overhead, was the sound of the chain dragging, and just as she was on the point of springing out of bed to call her brother, the chain seemed to go out of the upper room. She lay still and listened, and in a moment she heard it again. It was coming down the stairs. There was no carpet on the stairs, and she could hear the chain drop from step to step until it had come the whole way down. There it was, almost at the door of her room, and something that was strangely like fear kept her lying still, listening in horrified silence. Then it went along the hall, dragging close to the door, and then further away and back and forth for a while, and then it began dragging back up the stairs again. Step by step, she could hear it drawn over the edge of every step. And by the time it had reached the top, she remembered herself and called David. Again, did the brother and sister make it toward the upper room with the lamp? Not only that, but they looked at every nook and corner of the upper part of the house, and at last came back baffled. They had seen nothing extraordinary, and they had not heard a sound. "I'm going to see that ghost tonight," David said to his sister the next evening. "How?" "I'm going to sit up all night at the head of the stairs. Don't say anything about it to Mother. It might make her uneasy." So after all the household was quiet, David slipped into his place at the head of the stairs and sat down to his vigil. He had placed a screen at the head of the stairway so that it hid him from view, as if a ghost cared for a screen, and he established himself behind it and prepared to be as patient as he could. It seemed to him that hours so long had never been devised as those the town clocks told off that night. He bore it until midnight moderately well, because he argued with himself. If there were any ghosts about, they would surely walk then. But they were not in a humor for walking, and still the hours rolled on without any developments. He took the fidgets and had nervous twitches all over him. And at last he could endure it no longer, and had leaned his head back against the wall and was going blissfully to sleep when he heard a chain dragging just beyond the open door of that unused room. In spite of himself, a shiver ran down his back. There was no mistaking it. It was a real chain, if he had ever heard one. More than that, it had left the room and was coming straight towards the stairs. The hall was dark, and it was impossible for him to see anything, although he strained his eyes in the direction of the sound. And even while he looked, it had passed behind the screen, and was going down the stairs, dropping from step to step with a clank. Halfway down, a narrow strip of moonlight from a stair window lay directly across the steps. Whatever this thing was, it must pass through that patch of light, and David leaned forward and watched. Down it went from step to step, and presently it had slipped through the light, and was down, and a little later it came back again through the light, and up the stairs, and back into that unused room. And then David slept his knees jubilantly, and ran down to his room and slept all the rest of the night. Next morning he was very mysterious about his discoveries the night before. "Oh, yes, I saw the ghost," he said to Maggie. "There, don't ask so many questions. I'll tell you more about it tomorrow, maybe." And that was all the information she could get from him. It was very provoking. That day David made a purchase downtown and brought home a bulky bundle, which he hid in his own room and would not let his sister even peep at. "I'm going to try and catch a ghost tonight," he said. "And you know how it is. If I brag too much beforehand, I shall be sure to fail." He was working with something in the hall after the others had retired, but he did not sit up this time. He went to bed, and Margaret listened at his door, and found that he was soon asleep. But away in the night, they were all awakened by a squealing that brought them all to the hall in a great hurry. And there, at the head of the stairs, they found a huge rat trap that David had set a few hours before. And in the midst of the toils was a rat. "Why, David," exclaimed his mother, "I didn't know that there was a rat in the house." And then, all at once, she saw that there was a long chain hanging from a little iron collar around the creature's neck. And she and Margaret cried together. And this was the ghost. Such a funny ghost when they came to think of it. This poor rat with a nest and some hole in the broken chimney. He had been someone's pet once, perhaps, and now the households he had broken up, the nights he had disturbed, and the wild sensations he had created, it made his captors laugh to think that this innocent creature had been the cause of the whole trouble. "I'll get a cage for him and take care of him for the rest of his life," said David. "We owe him so much that we can't afford to be ungrateful." The next morning he took the ghost in a cage and showed it to the agent, and gave him a vivid account of the capture. "So you have a good house for about half the price, all on account of that rat," exclaimed the agent, grimly. "A young man, but never mind, you deserve it. What are you working for now? $6 a week? If you ever want to change your place, suppose you come around here. I think you need a business that will give you a chance to grow." And the agent and David shook hands over the cage of the ghost. So there you have it. Grand Dame's ghost story will be tomorrow, or will be next Sunday as we continue. And thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for attending today. That was a fun read. That was fun reading that stuff. Really fun. Anyway, tomorrow, we get up here. So I was leaning back, reading and relaxing. Tomorrow, 6:30 p.m., my guest will be Mark Biltz, and he and I will be talking about some biblical predictions. So be on hand for that, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and I'll see you tomorrow at that time. And I want to thank everybody that was listening tonight, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening. And I'll see you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, for Mark Biltz. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We're equal opportunity here at California House Radio. Just trying to get the word out about our little old show. All right? Okay, guys, I'll see you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a great rest of your evening.